Hey everybody, Todd here, and I hope you're having a great week. Whether you're a musician or you create other types of content, at some point you're going to be looking at purchasing an audio interface. And based on my own personal experience and the many comments and questions I get below the videos, I'm going to share with you what I see as the 5 biggest mistakes beginners make when purchasing an audio interface. And stick around because I'm going to have a bonus tip talking about something that almost never gets considered and leaves a lot on the table. So let's talk about it. Now, the first mistake is not understanding what you really need or want to do. I get a lot of questions from content creators about recording computer audio, especially under my loopback videos. And at the time, most didn't know what loopback was when they purchased an audio interface, but it sure would come in handy. Then I get questions from musicians about monitor mixes through headphones. Did you consider whether you might want to have more than one headphone output if you're going to record with someone else? And what about portability? Do you always record in one place, or do you take your music with you on the go? Now, the second tip is not understanding how many inputs you might need. It's easy to say, okay, well, there's just me, I need one microphone input, maybe a guitar input, and that's it. But the truth is, quite often you find out you need additional microphones. Maybe you have a second guest coming on a podcast, you want to mic up an acoustic guitar and sing with that. Maybe you've got a second person playing along with you. You could need a number of inputs. If you have a set of drums, you could need a whole lot more inputs. So considering microphones is something to think about for the future. Same thing applies with line inputs. Line inputs are great if you have keyboards and other instruments. Plus, they can help you out with outboard gear like what you see behind me here. So some other options that are there. And then, of course, there's digital expansion. So if you need to add a whole lot more in terms of microphones or line inputs, either ADAT, SPDIF, or other options could be a good choice. Now, closely connected to mistake number 2 is the third mistake, which is not understanding how many outputs you really need. Now, I already mentioned that headphone outputs are important. A second output can be useful if you have someone joining you on a podcast, a second musician recording, or even someone helping you record. So headphone outputs are just the beginning. Then we have the outputs on the back, typically of the interface. Now, you're going to get an output for a pair of studio monitors. That's pretty standard. But if you wanted to add up an extra headphone amplifier and say you had a whole band, having an extra set of outputs on the back of the interface will be useful to get everybody connected up and listening. And of course, then we also have the possibility of expansion with analog gear like what you see behind me. And of course, digital expansion is also an option. So keep all those things in mind. It's a way to grow into your interface and make sure you have what you need. Now, the fourth consideration is spending too much money, especially on things that are not going to be a benefit to you. For example, it's great to get a high-end audio interface with wonderful preamps and converters, but if you're recording in an untreated room with poor quality microphones or instruments, you're not going to get the recordings you'd like to get. You'd be better to spread your money between a good audio interface, some acoustic treatment, and good microphones and instruments. You'll get much better recordings. And then there's things like DSP. This Universal Audio Apollo Twin is a really popular interface, and don't get me wrong, it's a great interface. It has wonderful preamps, great converters in it, really good features, and solid build. The issue is that it has built-in DSP, so it's also a computer. That makes it very expensive. Now, it's nice to have DSP and those effects, but did you know that anytime you want to add an extra plug-in, it can be $100 or more, sometimes $200 or $300, just to get one more effect added. That can be an expense that really adds up over time. Sure, you get a few out of the box, but you'll always find that there are more you want. So be prepared for the extra expense if this is the way you go. Now, the fifth mistake is not thinking about the add-on expenses that are going to be required to get that interface working. Sure, you have microphones, studio monitors, stands, all of that type of stuff, but even just cables are a consideration. A couple of good microphone cables and a guitar cable can easily be $100 or more. And if you get into a more complicated setup with rack gear like what you see behind me, you can easily spend thousands on cables. So don't underestimate the added cost to do what you want to do with that interface. And my bonus tip is to not underestimate the value of the included software with your interface. I've looked at many of them and they are not all the same. So if your decision is coming down to 2, 3, or 4 audio interfaces, take a close look at the bundle and see if there's something that provides a better value for you. Now, I'm not trying to say that you need to get every feature you could ever need for all time. At some point, you're going to need to upgrade. It happens to everyone. But as a 7th, possibly second bonus tip, what I'm going to say is that if you purchase a good quality interface, it's going to retain its value. And that way, when it comes time to upgrade, you're going to be able to recapture a lot of those funds. And if you already have that audio interface and you're looking for ways to expand your studio, check out one of the videos on the screen. And as always, I appreciate you joining me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.